As we finish our study of Shakespeare for this quarter, I'd like you to think about this. Is Shakespeare still relevant? Does he still apply to us, and should we still be teaching him in the year 2018 to students? So, to teach it or not to teach it, your task is going to be to develop an argument essay in which you analyze whether or not he is still relevant and whether his work should be taught in schools. You have a really good background now on Shakespeare. You have seen his writing, you have gotten up, you have done Midsummer Night's Dream, so you really should have an opinion on whether or not this is something that we should be experiencing in schools. Oh, be careful, he's sticking his tongue out at you. So first, let's talk about what argument writing actually is going to look like. This is going to be a 5-paragraph argumentative essay. It's going to require you to really delve deep in regards to this topic, to collect information, evaluate evidence, and establish a position on the topic. There's some key terms that we need to make sure that everyone is aware of before we move on as well. First is central claim. Central claim is your thesis. It is what you are trying to argue. So, say for example, my central claim is going to be that Shakespeare is relevant and should be taught. Okay, so that is what I'm arguing. Your supporting claims are the reasons why you believe that your thesis is correct. So one reason I think we should still be teaching it is because the themes are universal. Okay. Another claim might be that Shakespeare describes the human condition. Another might be that the language is done in a very genius fashion. Okay, so these all might be reasons why someone would argue that Shakespeare should still be taught. Okay, so then after you have those supporting claims, you have to identify some evidence. You've got to gather evidence that's going to prove that claim. Keep in mind, there is going to be a lot of evidence out there for this particular topic. You want to make sure that you're really evaluating evidence for good, solid stuff that's going to support the claim that you've chosen that then proves your central claim. After, of course, you have that evidence, that's where the analysis comes in. You are explaining why or how that evidence supports the claim and thus proves your thesis. You want to be detailed here. You really want to go into depth about the evidence that you've chosen and how it proves your claim. Okay, then you have the counterargument. Now, the counterargument is anyone who goes against you and says that your thesis is wrong. So if my thesis, again, is that Shakespeare is relevant and should be taught, the counterargument says it should not be taught. It is no longer relevant. Okay? Now, a rebuttal is where you are going to provide evidence that negates or disagrees with the counterargument, the counterclaim. So this is where you have your chance to say why the counterargument is wrong with evidence to support yourself. So when you begin planning your essay, okay, you're going to think about these things. You've got to choose your side. Is Shakespeare relevant and should he be taught in schools? You have to make your distinction. Secondly, decide the reasoning you're going to use to support your position. And you will need at least 2 reasons that support your thesis. So really think about that. It is important to point out that though you might feel one way about it, you actually might find better research to support the other side. This is all about how well you can craft an argument, okay? So do keep that in mind, how well you can craft the argument, how well you can prove your thesis. That is all it is about, okay? It doesn't really matter personally what you think sometimes. It's more so what you can prove more effectively. Okay, so as part of the pre-writing, you also want to analyze your audience. Who's going to be reading this essay? Is your audience going to agree with you, be neutral, or disagree? You also, again, want to consider that opposing or counter argument. So what is that other side, and what are reasons why they might believe that their argument is more effective? And then how are you going to provide a rebuttal to that position? And remember, that rebuttal must include evidence. All right, so we draft the introduction. This is going to look exactly like the literary analysis that we did in quarter 1. Okay, it's going to follow the same format. So in the first paragraph, you have your introduction. The introduction has 3 parts: the hook, the context, and the thesis. So in the hook, you are working to grab your reader's attention right away. You can ask a question, you can open with a quote, or you can open with a strong statement. It again has to be something though that's going to relate back to your thesis. The context is where you build that bridge between the hook and your thesis. This is going to give some background information about the topic. In this case, you're going to be talking about people who question whether or not Shakespeare is something that we should still be doing in schools. It is going to end then with your thesis statement. That is the last thing I should see. Thesis statement is your claim. It is your central argument. It is what you're going to prove. Remember, that thesis statement has 3 parts. It has the topic, your position on the topic, and your rationale. So, for example, Shakespeare is still relevant and should be taught in 2018 because it includes universal themes and truly describes the human condition. Okay, so I've given you my hook, or excuse me, my topic, which is whether or not it should be taught. My position is that it should, and my 2 reasons why. All of those things are going to be going into your thesis. So drafting the essay, the body paragraphs. The body includes 3 different paragraphs. In the second paragraph, this is where you focus on your first reason that's going to prove your thesis. Again, you have to include evidence and then an analysis of how that evidence proves the claim. So my first reason might be that Shakespeare's themes are universal. Okay, and then I have found evidence that proves that, and I have analyzed how that evidence proves my thesis. Okay, third paragraph is that second reason, okay, that second supporting claim that you're going to make to prove the thesis. So that might be that it clearly describes the human condition. I again provide evidence and an analysis fully explaining how that evidence proves my thesis. Now, fourth paragraph, this is going to be counterargument, okay? It is really important to strengthen your own argument by recognizing what the counterargument is and then providing evidence to refute that argument, to truly explain and shut down that other side, okay? So that's what that fourth paragraph is all about, is stating what the counterargument actually is and then saying why it is wrong with evidence. All right, the conclusion, last paragraph, paragraph 5. In your conclusion, you are going to do these things. Restate what your thesis was, okay? Summarize again those supporting claims that proved your thesis, and end with some type of zinger. You really want to hit this with a bang, okay? It's different from the literary analysis in that you are really trying to prove a point, and you want your audience to come to your side of thinking, okay? So you can ask a thought-provoking question. You can make a prediction of what could happen if someone doesn't necessarily take action and do what you say. Or you can make a recommendation or a call to action, but it's something that just really kind of brings it all together and leaves a lasting impression on the reader. Okay, so that is the 5-paragraph essay for the argument. Some things you need to remember as you're writing this. First off, this is a formal research paper. So you need to make sure that your tone throughout your writing is very formal. So there shouldn't be no I or you being used at all. Make sure that you are researching using credible sources. And I think that is one of the most important things. Your sources should not just be someone else's essay, okay? We're talking about something that has been published on a reputable website, okay? You don't just want to be pulling things out of, whatever you find on the internet, because that isn't necessarily a credible source. You also are required to add those in-text citations that I talked to you about quarter 1 when you did the literary analysis. Anytime you have taken research from someone else and used their thoughts and their words, you must cite the source. If you do not cite the source, again, you have to remember that that is plagiarism, okay? So not only do I want to see those in-text citations with the footnotes, but I also want to see your works cited page where you've listed all of your sources in MLA format. And I'm going to post the video again on how to do those in-text citations and make that MLA formatted works cited page for you to reference in case you're not sure of how to do it. Okay, again, the more time you spend doing this, the better your essay is going to turn out. So I'm going to give you a week to do all of your pre-writing and all of your planning, getting yourself organized before you're even going to have to write. So please spend that time doing your planning. Okay, and lastly, make sure that you are always proofreading what you write looking for grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. Read your essay out loud. Don't just rely on doing it in your head.